Let me ask you something real. If your paycheck disappeared tomorrow and all you had left were your habits, would those habits make you wealthier 5 years from now, or would they keep you exactly where you are? Because building wealth isn't only about how much money you make. It's about what you repeatedly do with the money, time, and opportunities you already have. And that's what I call the 4 a.m. rule. It isn't literally about waking up at 4 a.m. It's about what you do when nobody is watching, when there's no applause, no likes, no one checking whether you follow it through. Because the habits you practice in private eventually show up in public. It's 4 a.m. The city is quiet. Your phone isn't buzzing. Nobody is watching. And somewhere someone is studying a skill, reviewing their budget, reading a book, building a business, or learning how to invest. Not because they're guaranteed to become rich, because they're increasing their odds. Meanwhile, someone else is still telling themselves, I'll start next month. I'll invest when I make more. I'll get serious when life gets easier. 5 years later, those two people might look very different. Not because one discovered a secret stock, not because one got lucky, but because one person consistently made better decisions. Let me give you a simple example. Meet Mike and James. Both are 24 years old. Both earn $60,000 a year. Both want financial freedom. Mike finishes work at PM. He gets home, orders food, turns on Netflix, and starts scrolling. One episode becomes 3. A few minutes on TikTok becomes an hour. He sees a new phone. He buys it. He sees a vacation online. He puts it on a credit card. He tells himself he'll start saving when his salary increases. James finishes work at PM too, but his evenings look different. He cooks more often. He tracks his spending. He learns new skills. He reads. He researches investing. He doesn't invest every dollar he earns. Instead, he first tries to understand what he's buying, what the risks are, and whether it fits his goals. Neither man becomes rich overnight. That's the point. For the first year, almost nothing looks different. Same jobs, similar apartments, similar phones, similar weekends. James even gets teased sometimes. Bro, you're thinking about retirement already. You're too young, live a little. And James does live. He just doesn't want every decision today to become a bill for tomorrow. That's the difference. Wealth usually doesn't look impressive while it's being built. It's often boring. Saving money is boring. Learning a valuable skill is boring. Reading financial statements is boring. Cooking instead of ordering expensive food can be boring. Investing consistently can be boring, but boring doesn't mean ineffective. In fact, some of the most important financial habits are incredibly ordinary. And that's where compound growth enters the story. Imagine someone invests $500 every month and earns an average hypothetical return of 10% per year. Not guaranteed, not promised, just a mathematical example. After 10 years, the account could grow to roughly $103,000. After 20 years, roughly $380,000. After 30 years, roughly $1.13 million. Those numbers aren't a prediction of what the market will actually deliver. Markets go up. Markets go down, returns vary, and investments can lose value. But the example shows something important. Time can make consistent contributions incredibly powerful. That's the real lesson. You don't need to become a millionaire next month. You need a system you can actually follow for years. And that brings us to one of the biggest mistakes people make. They confuse intensity with discipline. They think discipline means working 18 hours a day. It doesn't. Discipline can be much simpler. It's automatically saving part of your income. It's checking your spending. It's learning before investing. It's paying attention to high-interest debt. It's continuing even when the excitement disappears. Consistency beats the occasional burst of motivation. Now let's talk about investing, because this is where social media can make finance look completely different from reality. You see someone posting a screenshot of a huge stock gain. You hear about the person who supposedly turned a few $100s into thousands. And suddenly, slow investing feels boring. But investing isn't supposed to be a casino. A diversified index fund, for example, is designed to track a market index rather than rely on someone constantly picking individual stocks. But index funds still carry market risk, and their returns aren't guaranteed. That's why the disciplined investor thinks differently. Instead of asking, what's going to make me rich this month, they ask, what investment strategy makes sense for my goals, timeline, and risk tolerance? That's a completely different question. Now imagine the market falls. Mike opens his investing app. Everything is red. He's scared. He starts thinking, what if it keeps falling? So he sells because he can't handle watching his account decline. James sees the same market, but instead of pretending he knows exactly what will happen next, he goes back to the plan he made before the downturn. If his plan was built around long-term investing and he still has the appropriate time horizon and risk tolerance, he may continue contributing. Not because he knows the market will rise tomorrow. He doesn't. Nobody does. That's the point. Discipline isn't predicting the future. It's refusing to make major decisions based purely on panic. And this applies to debt too. Imagine Mike has several credit cards. He carries balances from month to month. Some credit cards can charge substantial interest, and interest may accrue daily depending on the card's terms. So a purchase that felt small when he made it can become much more expensive if the balance stays unpaid. James approaches credit differently. He doesn't automatically consider every available credit limit as money he can spend. He looks at the actual cost. He asks, can I afford this without creating a problem for future me? That's a powerful question, because credit can be useful, but carrying expensive debt can make building wealth much harder. The CFPB notes that paying a credit card balance in full by the due date can generally help you avoid interest on purchases when the card's terms provide a grace period. The lesson isn't credit cards are evil. The lesson is understand the rules before you use the tool. And then there's lifestyle inflation. This one is sneaky. You get a raise, your income increases. And instead of increasing your savings and investments, your lifestyle expands immediately. A nicer car, a more expensive apartment, more subscriptions, more restaurant meals, more shopping. At first, it feels like success. But if every increase in income immediately becomes an increase in spending, your financial position may barely improve. The disciplined person asks a different question. How much of this raise can I keep? That does mean living miserably. You should enjoy some of your money. Money is a tool, not a punishment. The goal is to build a life where spending on things you genuinely value doesn't destroy your future options. That's what financial freedom really means. Options. The ability to handle an emergency without everything falling apart. The ability to leave a terrible job because you have savings. The ability to take an opportunity because you aren't buried in payments. The ability to say no. And sometimes the ability to say yes. Now think about Mike and James again. 3 years have passed. James has become some billionaire. He still works. He still has expenses. He still makes mistakes, but he's developed something much more valuable than a flashy lifestyle. A system. He saves consistently. He invests according to his plan. He avoids unnecessary high-interest debt. He keeps learning. He increases his skills. And as his income grows, he tries to prevent every extra dollar from immediately disappearing into a more expensive lifestyle. Mike isn't necessarily a bad person. That's important. He's simply been making different choices. And choices compound too, not just money. Habits compound, skills compound, knowledge compounds, relationships compound, and unfortunately bad financial habits can compound as well. That's why starting small matters. You don't need to transform your entire life tomorrow. Start with one decision. Track where your money goes. Build an emergency fund appropriate for your situation. Pay attention to expensive debt. Learn the basics of investing. Automate savings if you can. Increase your skills, then repeat, and repeat, and repeat. That's the rule. It's not about being extreme. It's not about sleeping 4 hours a night. It's not about sacrificing every enjoyable experience. It's about becoming the kind of person who can keep a good decision going long after the motivation disappears. Because motivation is temporary. Systems are stronger. You don't need to feel motivated every payday to save. You can automate it. You don't need to feel excited every month to invest. You can follow a plan. You don't need to feel inspired every evening to learn. You can simply sit down and do the work. That's discipline, not perfection, consistency. And here's the part most people don't want to hear. You probably won't see dramatic results immediately. Your first few months might feel pointless. Your first year might look unimpressive. You might save money while your friends are buying things you want. You might invest while the market is moving sideways. You might learn a skill for months before it increases your income. That's normal. The goal isn't to look rich next year. The goal is to give your future self more choices than your present self has. Imagine meeting yourself 10 years from now. What would that person want you to do today? Spend everything, or build something, buy every upgrade, or buy only what actually matters, chase every trend. Or develop skills that can increase your earning power. The future doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be consistent. So forget the idea that wealth requires some secret formula. There isn't a magic investment. There isn't a guaranteed stock. There isn't a shortcut that eliminates risk. There is only the boring stuff. Earn, save, learn, invest responsibly. Avoid unnecessary expensive debt. Give your money time, and repeat. That's how small decisions can become a completely different financial life. So here's your challenge. Tonight, before you sleep, look at one financial habit you've been ignoring. Maybe it's spending, maybe it's debt, maybe it's saving, maybe it's simply not knowing where your money goes. Pick one thing, fix one thing, then tomorrow, do it again. Not because someone is watching, not because you're trying to impress your friends, because your future self is going to live with the consequences of today's decisions. Comment I'm building if you're ready to take that seriously. Not because a comment makes you wealthy, it doesn't, but because putting your goal into words can be the first step toward actually following through. And subscribe if you want more videos about money, discipline, business, and building wealth without the hype. Remember, the goal isn't to look wealthy. The goal is to become financially stronger. The goal isn't to predict every market move. The goal is to have a plan. The goal isn't to wake up at AM every morning. The goal is to do the important work when nobody is watching. Because 5 years from now, your life will be influenced by thousands of small decisions you make between now and then. So make them count. The world might not notice your discipline today. Your bank account might not change tomorrow. But if you keep building, eventually the results become impossible to ignore. That's the AM rule. Do the work when nobody is watching. Build before you show off. Choose consistency over hype, and give your future self something to thank you for. I'll see you in the next one. Let's get to work.